gente, MsMalcolmHughes back with another book review, and today we will be talking about The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Souljah. The Coldest Winter Ever is one of those books we all read in middle school or high school when we were entirely too young, but is the experience of reading it as an adult the same? Let's get into it. The Coldest Winter Ever is categorized under urban fiction. On the surface, it's a coming-of-age story that follows a young woman by the name of Winter Souljah, and the downfall of her family is essentially what it is. We get to follow her from riches to rags. It's the exact opposite of what you want your story to be. In the very beginning, we are dropped into this ferocious character. Winter starts off letting you know that bam, on this day at this time during the craziest winter storm ever, I bust out of my mother's into this world. And she makes you feel her immediately. And in creating such a confrontational, in-your-face character, what Sister Souljah has done has inevitably given all of us someone to love, to hate. I personally don't hate Winter, but I know a lot of folks who do. She's such a complex character that you will have mixed emotions about her and the decisions she makes. But I'm jumping a little bit ahead, so let's rewind. So we start off with Winter Souljah, who grows up in the projects in Brooklyn. She reps that crowd. Her entire family is there, and her entire family is there because her father has set up shop there. Her father, Ricky Souljah, is a man who is essentially the top drug lord in that area. So Winter and her siblings, she has a little sister named Portia, and then there are the twins who are younger. They're essentially spoiled and have this sheltered life. Winter, being the eldest, she gets out a little bit more, so she has more of the knowledge of Brooklyn, because street knowledge is different than any other type of knowledge you will learn, right? So she has that knowledge to her, and she also has the benefit of having Ricky Souljah coach her with all the lessons that he has learned. Winter's world is completely disrupted and turned upside down when, well, it starts slow actually. Things change for her when Ricky decides that he needs to get his family out of Brooklyn. It's no longer safe. His empire is building. He is a man who deserves a certain stature. He wants his wife and children to have certain things in life. So he decides that Brooklyn's no longer safe. He then moves them out to Long Island, if I remember correctly. Then moves them out to Long Island to this lovely home. It's huge. It's a different neighborhood. And Winter isn't having it. She still sneaks back to Brooklyn. And at that point in time, that's the worst of her problems, right? But little does she know that that is the beginning of her problems. Soon after, not very long after they're out there, the feds come, arrest her dad. It's a lot, right? It's a lot. Even as you're reading it, one of the reviews of this said that if a rap song could be a novel, then it would be The Coldest Winter Ever. I don't really like that, but I actually don't like that saying, but I do understand where it's coming from. It is such a glorious tale within this book. So Winter actually isn't home. I won't tell y'all where she was. It's super controversial. I feel ways about it. But Winter wasn't home when her father is arrested. And when she gets home, everything in her life has changed from that moment. She understands, I think, better than anyone else, better than her mother, better than anyone else, that she now has to fend for herself, right? Souljah isn't coming home. Because as everyone knows, when the feds come and get you, they've been building the case. And he's not coming home. And essentially, he's charged with everything that you could be charged with, worst case scenario. And at this time, Winter makes a series of decisions that takes her on a journey that could have led to self-realization and growth, but Winter knows what Winter knows. All Winter knows is what she's seen her father do, the neighborhood in which she comes from. She knows there are other alternatives. She is shown other options. One person who shows her that or tells her of it is Midnight. Midnight, you know, I love Midnight. I really do. I've reviewed Midnight 3. If you haven't seen it, it'll be up here. And reading Midnight, it's very clear that Sister Souljah was attempting to describe what most women would describe as the perfect mate. Midnight is strong, silent, dignified. He stands on his principles. He's logical, he's strategic, right? But he's also loyal, right? And he's fierce. It just comes across. You get a clear understanding of who Midnight is just from reading the story. One thing about this book that makes it so great is that the characters are dynamic. You're instantly drawn in, and the book doesn't release you. Even when you feel like something may be a lull, it's really not. There's always a lot going on. It's action-packed. You're never bored. Winter is in love with Midnight, and why she has no reason not to be. Essentially, he's the one person who she can't just have, right? She is the flyest thing around Brooklyn. Her daddy is the top dude, so she's also forbidden fruit, right? So it's like, that's Santiago's daughter. You don't really want to do that. You might actually lose your life. But for real. So she has this thing for Midnight because Midnight is her father's, essentially, one would say right-hand man, but I don't think that's the terminology. I would say Midnight is the top soldier. Santiago knows that Midnight will be there. He's loyal, right? Midnight feels as if he owes Santiago a great deal. And for him, that's just not a line he's willing to cross. He wouldn't risk it all for Santiago's daughter. Also, he informs Winter that you and the young girls you run around with ain't it. Nah, you ain't got the right head on your shoulders for me. Because Winter wants to go into business with Midnight, but Midnight's like, I have plans. Because at one point she accuses everybody else is locked up, right? They took Santiago down, they took everyone else down as well. And Winter at one moment questions, like, why is everyone else locked up? Why are you not locked up, right? Did you betray him? And it's obvious that that's not true. And Santiago acknowledges for himself that, no, I made sure you stayed clean. So Midnight is one person by not allowing Winter to go with him, because he's like, you don't have the right head on your shoulders for me. You don't even know what's going on in the world, right? You don't even read a newspaper. You have to read it. I don't want to give it all away. He tries to inform her that there's another way. Sister Souljah is someone else. So that is also a tricky piece about this book. Sister Souljah writes about herself. And I know that has to be tricky as the author, because she does criticize herself. And she presents herself with flaws. I also think that sometimes she presents herself as too righteous. Especially during the letters between her and Midnight. I have mixed feelings about it, but it doesn't take away from the story. I have mixed feelings about it on a personal level. But again, that's a sign of good storytelling and good writing, when you're so invested in what's happening that you have strong stances on it. One thing I can say is reading this as a child or as a preteen, and then reading this as an adult, you get an entirely different perspective on Winter Santiago. She needs therapy. She needs to be on somebody's couch session, like for real. Because I understand her ideology. I got cousins, I know folks who, we all grew up in similar environments, right? I didn't grow up in the projects, but I grew up in the hood. And we just have similar backgrounds. So I understand exactly why she thinks the way she thinks. But there is more to life than the limited world in which she knows. Unless you are exposed to something different, then you have no idea that there is another option, right? There's another path, and that there are alternatives. And I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, right? There are laws, but that gets tricky, and that's another conversation on a philosophical level for another day. What I am saying is Winter has a very limited viewpoint of what life can be, and therefore she was destined to fail from the start. And I think that's the brilliant thing about this book, is that on the surface it appears to be a story about a young girl and the challenges she faced when she's out and having to survive on her own, when her security system of her father and her family is no longer available to her. That's on a limited surface level, and you can argue that that's what the story is about, and if that's all you get, then that's fine. But it's also a deeper analysis of Black culture in America, specifically Black urban culture, and the areas of improvement that we as a people need to face and address. It's also a critical analysis of the justice system and the pipelines to prison. And so in many ways, this book was ahead of its time from when it first came out. This book first came out in 1999, And it's clear that Sister Souljah wanted to have those deep conversations, wanted folks to ask those hard questions of where are we as a people, where could we be, where do we need to go. Now, for everything that's good about this book, from the character development to the dialogue and language that's used, to the imagery, to the description of the areas, you feel everything with the character. It's very visceral. You definitely feel it and you're engaged. But there are flaws with the book, and there are counter arguments. But one thing I appreciate about the book is that when I'm even thinking of things that frustrate me or counter arguments, I can also think of the other side and understand why she did it this way. One thing that I would like to have seen expounded upon is Midnight's time in jail, especially being Muslim, and just how that panned out, right? Because, you know, a lot of folks convert to Islam in prison, and just the Muslim community in prison, I would have liked to have seen that explored a bit more. I think she does that in subsequent books, but I'm just saying for here, because we get a very limited viewpoint into his time in jail and what happens, but it's also from his perspective, so all of that may have not mattered. He was talking about what was significant in his letters to Sister Souljah and why he is the way he is and the choices that he's made. So I get that. However, I do think that that's something to unpack a little further, and why he was or was not protected, because a lot of people do click up in prison as a source of protection, right? So I think that's something to think about. I also would have liked to have known more about Winter's mother. She gets dealt a hard card. Listen, life is about choices, right? We all make choices, and then our choices inevitably determine where we'll end up. She got dealt a hard card, and her life took some rough turns before and after Santiago got locked up, but most specifically after Santiago went to prison, and the trajectory of her life was just turbulent. So much so that at the end of the book, I won't say where the book ends, but it's hard for everyone there, especially Ricky Santiago. I would like to gotten more into her psyche and her thoughts when she was making the decisions that she was making, and then also if she ever reflected on the choices that she made and the man that she married and the life that she desired. Was it worth it? At one point in time she says it was, and I get it, but I would have liked to have known as things progressed, as it was clear that Ricky wasn't coming home. Your life will never be the same again. I don't think she ever accepted that. She escaped from that reality. So I would have liked to have known more about her thoughts and her feelings. I do appreciate the dynamic between Winter and the men in her life. I don't think that's something that's analyzed enough. I hope that Winter at some point can analyze that for herself. But just that relationship that she has with him. The relationship she has with her father is very significant. The choices that she makes and the type of men that she chooses. But overall, I think it's a good book. I think everyone should check it out. I think that the critical analysis piece, the hard look, I think that there are opinions that folks may disagree with. I think there's arguments to be made. I really appreciate the different perspectives and the divide between the way Sister Souljah thinks and the way Winter thinks, and then the way Midnight thinks compared to the way that Ricky thinks, and the means that people use to get to similar or different ends. So I do think the book is brilliant. I think it's well done. Y'all know I think it's a classic. I think everyone should check it out. If I give it a grade an A to F, I think you know where I'll land. It's an A book. This was a culture shifter, and I think that it stands on that. I think still to this day you can read it and it's still applicable today, which is why I think the next book is coming out. She's created a whole series. There's the 3 Midnight books, the Portia Santiago story, this book, and then in March, as you all know, I'm doing a giveaway currently. If you haven't already entered, I will link the video that tells you how to do that here. But Life After Death, that takes us on the next part of this journey, because it's still going, the issues are still relevant, the way in which Winter thinks is still applicable today. And I think the dialogues and the conversation and the healing and the analysis moving forward as a people, the conversations are still critical and necessary. So read it, please. Well, y'all, that's my review of The Coldest Winter Ever. Pick it up and read it. Enter my giveaway if you haven't. reread it with me, join me in reading Life After Death when it comes out so we can all talk about it in March. That's it for me, y'all. More book reviews to come. The video announcing all of the books that I will be reviewing this month will be here. There'll be 4 more book reviews coming this month, which I'm super excited about. As always, I'm MsMalcolmHughes, one who believes that books are sometimes better than people. And until next time, y'all, please stay safe and be kind to each other. Also, for those of you inquiring, I do still have buttons, my MsMalcolmHughes pins, and the details on how to get those are below.